sacrificed to Roman emperors, but not the Jews. And you already see this collusion between Rome and the Jews, who say they are Jews but are of the synagogue of Satan, Revelation 3:9. And the most violent persecutions we see in the book of Acts, the most violent persecutions we even see in the Gospels, are not carried out by the Romans. They were carried out by the Jews on their own brethren, who accepted the message of Jesus Christ, who believed in the message of Jesus Christ, that he was God manifest in the flesh, that he was the Messiah, the anointed one, that he was the Father, because if you see him, you see the Father, according to John 14, verse 7 to 9, that he is the I am. Before Abraham was I am. John 8, verse 58 to 59, the Jews took up stones to stone him. And we clearly see Paul, proclaim, he makes this bold statement in Acts 20, verse 28, in his farewell to the church of Ephesus, where he says, God purchased the church with his own blood. So Jesus Christ, the Messiah, this individual, this character, is literally the embodiment of God's salvation to mankind for those who believe in this controversial revelation. And yet we are told in 1 Timothy 3:16, there is no controversy, right? Without controversy. Great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh. So this debate has been raging for a very long time between the early Christians, who inherited from the Jewish faith, who understood clearly that the one who had power over life and death and who resurrected himself from the dead is no other than God himself, because God incarnated himself in a body of flesh and blood. And the Father suffered on the cross in the flesh. The Spirit was experiencing pain, hunger, suffering through this union with flesh and blood. Flesh and blood was united to the Spirit. Clement of Rome states this. Even Ignatius of Antioch says that the Spirit was fused with the flesh and blood. And this is why in John 10:30, Jesus Christ said, I and the Father are one, right? This existential form, outward form, this physical body you're seeing is the Son. It's generated, it's created by the Father. But then the Father is the source. The Father is the one who begets this body. The Father is the one who generates this body so that he might inhabit it and fulfill salvation for his people. This is the gospel. Right there. That's the gospel. And the second epistle of Clement is even more explicit and is disparaged by Roman Catholics and Protestants alike. Because in Second Clement, the second epistle of Clement, he says that Jesus Christ was first a spirit and then became flesh. There is only one life-giving spirit that has the ability to become, and that is I am that I am. Ayah Sharayah. If you go to the Hebrew, it means I am that I am, and I will be who I choose to be. I will be who I choose to be. And God chose to be our salvation, to be our Yeshua, in order to redeem us from sin and death. And this is so important, This is the gospel message. This is the gospel message. I'm going to read your comments, and you will see how this all connects with this false dichotomy that we're presented, where we're saying, no, it's the Roman Catholic Church that basically is the Roman Catholic Church is Mystery Babylon. The Jews is, okay, it's only the Jews, Mystery Babylon the Great, but then we have to understand the beast, the Mystery Babylon, the whore that sits on many waters. We have to make sense of all of these passages in light of history and in light of current news, the news that we're witnessing today in the Vatican, in Israel, in Palestine, this geopolitical struggle that we're seeing in the Middle East. But we're first going to go to scripture, and then we're going to go to the table talk of Martin Luther, and I'm going to bring powerful arguments in regards to the Council of Nicaea, where clearly we see the Romans, that is the Christian Romans, the Roman Church, the bishop of the Roman Church, the pastor of the Roman Church did not attend. He wasn't present at the Council of Nicaea. Martin Luther admits this in his discussion, in table talk, in the writings of Martin Luther. He admits that no bishop of Rome attended the Council of Nicaea. Now, have you ever wondered why the Bishop of Rome didn't attend the Council of Nicaea? Well, remember, the majority of the Christians in Rome, before the doctrine of the Trinity was forced down the true believer's throat, what was the majority popular common opinion in the Church of Rome? Monarchianism. Makes perfect sense why the Bishop of Rome didn't attend this meeting. And this was just after the persecution of Diocletian, the Emperor Diocletian. I have it in this book in French. I've already mentioned this, Le Trésor des Martyrs. So this is basically the treasure of the martyrs, the treasure of the martyrs. And you see they're basically burning a monarchian Christian there. Le Trésor Diocletian, the treasure of the martyrs. Okay? Very, very important, because you have to understand, after Constantine officially ratified with the bishops that came from the East, when they officially ratified the doctrine and they made it official and they imposed it, in the book of Eusebius of Caesarea on the life of Constantine, and I can share this as well, he makes it very clear that after the council, all the schismatics, all of the schismatics are people who divide, who separate from the official church. All of the heretics who refused to submit to the Nicene Creed, they were hunted down. The properties were confiscated. The writings were confiscated. Some of them were even burnt. You see why I mentioned Commodianus last night, how this is important, because there were extant writings who survived. And this is important because, you see, right after the Council of Nicaea, we see a union of the pagan state of Rome with what is called Christianity. And that form of Christianity was completely alien to monarchianism, to the early Christian belief. And now they're dividing God into three separate persons, and you have this triad, this pantheon that is nothing remotely similar to what we find in the oneness of God in the Old Testament and the New Testament. They killed basically God in their hearts and minds. The idea that God is one, they basically annulled it. They deleted this principle, this rule of faith, and they replaced it, or should I say, they basically synthesized pagan philosophy with the early Christian view that Jesus Christ was literally the God of Israel incarnate. He was the creator incarnate. And there were no speculations when it came to God, not like the philosophers, the Platonists, the Stoics, who basically said, there is this unknowable God force, and then what stems of his being are lesser gods, and these lesser gods are sort of agents, the bridges between the unknowable God and the realm of men, creation, because the unknowable God cannot soil his being. He cannot corrupt. That is to say, he cannot taint his divinity with creation, because in the minds of the Gnostics, and the first Gnostics were Jews, apostate Jews who basically abandoned the faith, and Christians who abandoned the faith. Okay, so the first Gnostics were literally Jews and Christians. And they were circulating this idea that God cannot be reached. In order to reach God, God has created or has generated lesser gods. And in order to get to that unknowable God, you need to go through all of this scheme of, worshipping all of these lesser gods, and then finally these gods will reveal you the true God. Does that sound like what the Trinitarians usually describe when they're talking about the Son and the Father? This is where it all comes from.